In this video, we will discuss the methods and considerations when collecting samples for DNA testing purposes. The utilisation of DNA information in beef breeding programs has become increasingly widespread. The three major applications of DNA information are 1. Parentage verification, 2. The management of genetic conditions and/or qualitative traits such as horn pole status and coat colour. 3. Genomics, or the use of DNA information in the BREEDPLAN genetic evaluation. In practice, many beef breeders will undertake DNA testing of their animals for a combination of these reasons. There are several different sample types that are commonly collected by beef breeders for DNA testing purposes. These include 1. Tissue sampling units, or TSUs. An earplug sample is collected using a specialised applicator gun. Able to be collected from birth, TSUs are often collected in conjunction with calf tagging. TSUs have a unique barcoding system that allows them to be linked to animal ID tags. This barcoding system, along with machine processing, means that sample mix-ups are less likely than for other sample types. TSUs can be shipped at room temperature. However, once the tissue samples have been collected, TSUs are not suitable for long-term home storage. 2. Hair samples. Hair samples are collected by pulling approximately 40 hairs from the tail switch of an animal. As the DNA is contained in the root bulb, it is vital that hair samples are pulled and not cut. The collected hairs should also be clean, dry, and free of any foreign matter. Collecting hair samples from young calves under 60 days of age is not recommended. This is because the hair roots of these young calves are still developing and are therefore unlikely to yield sufficient quantities of DNA. Instead, hair samples are commonly collected when calves are brought into the yards for weaning. Hair samples are suitable for long-term home storage. They should be stored at room temperature. 3. Semen samples. Unlike other sample types, semen samples can only be collected from mature bulls. However, semen samples have the advantage of being a source of DNA when access to the physical bull is restricted, for example, bulls that are overseas or deceased. Prior to postage, semen straws should be thawed. They should also be protected to prevent damage while in transit. One option is to place each straw inside an empty pen. If you are sending multiple straws, it is recommended that you place each straw into its own individual sealed plastic bag. This will prevent contamination should one break in transit. Finally, make sure to only send in unopened straws, as used straws cannot be processed. Once samples are collected, they are ready for the testing process. DNA testing for beef cattle is conducted by commercial genotyping service providers. Many breed societies have arrangements with commercial genotyping service providers that cover sample submission protocols and testing costs. Utilising such an agreement ensures that any DNA tests you undertake can be matched to the relevant animal on your breed society's database. This allows the DNA test results to be utilised in any relevant analyses. Please contact your breed society for further details of their DNA testing arrangements. There are a number of additional points for the beef producer who is collecting samples for DNA testing purposes to consider. Producers should be aware that only some BREEDPLAN analyses currently utilise genomics information, typically referred to as single-step BREEDPLAN. If you are unsure whether your BREEDPLAN analysis includes genomics, please contact staff at your BREEDPLAN processing centre for further information. Ensure sufficient time is allowed for DNA samples to be included in the BREEDPLAN analysis. This process is not quick. Once samples are processed, which typically takes 3 to 4 weeks alone, the resulting DNA information then needs to be returned, typically to the breed society. Once loaded on the relevant database, the DNA information will then need to wait for the next scheduled BREEDPLAN analysis, which could be several weeks away. While 3 to 4 months should be a sufficient amount of time in the majority of cases, a small subset of animals may require resampling. Therefore, if you require the resulting EBVs for a time-sensitive purpose, such as the selection of replacement heifers, or to include in sale catalogues, it is recommended that DNA samples are submitted at least 6 months in advance of your deadline. The long-term home storage of samples for DNA testing purposes is highly recommended. This low-cost option provides a safety net against a number of occurrences, including A. Retesting required. A small number of samples will require retesting before a valid DNA result can be obtained. Having a backup allows a resample to be quickly obtained without the need to muster. B. Further testing on already tested animals. Breeders may decide to carry out additional DNA tests on an animal in the future. There may not be sufficient sample remaining from earlier tests, so a backup in storage is convenient for sample resubmission. C. Future testing on untested animals. Storing samples for every animal in the herd allows future testing of any animal if questions arise regarding parentage and/or genetic condition status. This may include future genetic conditions that are not yet identified. Of the three sample types already discussed, hair samples are the best suited to long-term home storage. For this purpose, each hair sample should be placed in a clearly identified paper envelope and stored in the dark at room temperature. An office drawer or filing cabinet is ideal. Long-term storage in plastic bags should be avoided as this can lead to hair samples sweating and going mouldy. A number of breed societies offer DNA testing bundles, packaging multiple DNA tests together. This allows breeders to request a combination of parentage verification, genetic condition testing, and/or genomics for a single price point. These bundles simplify the DNA testing request process and are usually cheaper than paying for each DNA test separately. Producers should be aware that some commercial genotyping service providers may charge surcharges to process certain sample types. Information on any such surcharges should be available from your genotyping service provider and/or your breed society. For further information on collecting samples for DNA testing purposes, please see the BREEDPLAN tip sheet or check out the information in the BREEDPLAN Help Centre. Thanks to those who have provided images and video footage for us to use in the Recording for BREEDPLAN video series.